Hello everyone, welcome back into MLS Digest. I'm Camille here for 15 and 15, a weekly recap series covering the most recent match week of MLS action, bringing you everything you need to know and the most important storylines from the 15 matches this past weekend in about 15 minutes or so. And in this one, I'll be covering everything from match week 2. Before we get into it all, be sure to show some love on the channel by leaving a like on this video, commenting down below what your favorite matchups of the weekend were, and of course subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already, because any support goes such a long way to help the channel grow. Match week 2 started with a southern rivalry between Charlotte and Atlanta. Charlotte got the better of Atlanta with a 2-0 result. Pep Biel and Wilfried Zaha, the newcomer, scoring to secure the win. And Zaha, in his first actual competitive match with Charlotte, gets on the score sheet after missing the opener at Seattle. Now, I don't think things were too comfortable for Charlotte to begin this match. I actually think Atlanta was a much sharper team in the first half and had some decent half chances that, considering the quality on Atlanta and how few chances you're probably going to get in any given match against Charlotte with that solid defensive structure, Atlanta should have converted on some of those chances, but they didn't. And in the second half, Charlotte completely flipped the switch. The tempo of the progression of the ball was much faster. That things got much more direct with long balls in over the top. And that is ultimately what undid Atlanta's back line with just one first-choice starter back there because of injuries. And then Charlotte took the 2-0 lead and really didn't look back once they minimized the risk holding on to that lead at home. It's very hard for any team to get back into it. And as for Atlanta, we know how dangerous they will be in transition, but if they do go down, it's about getting that chemistry and that game speed up to par when it comes to breaking down these low blocks, because I think that's going to be a huge growing pain for this attack, considering the fact that they are so thin defensively. RSL and the Sounders faced off after both came off different results before this in Champions Cup. RSL got knocked out in the round of 32. Meanwhile, the Sounders advanced to the round of 16, where they'll face Cruz Azul this week. This result was a head-scratcher in my opinion from a Sounders perspective, and not to take away from RSL because they completely deserve this result, outworked and out-hustled the Sounders, but there's a clear talent gap between these two in the Sounders' favor, and the Sounders have the depth to rotate efficiently now, considering all the competitions they are in and will be in. And they did have that round of 32 tie wrapped up going into the second leg before this game. They didn't really need to use too much energy to see that one out. And yet here you don't even see Paul Arriola, Jesus Ferreira, or Pedro de la Vega start. And even though they do have the depth, like I'm saying, they just came out so flat for whatever reason. That's one thing you just don't see from Schmetzer Sounders teams, is that they don't usually get outworked, despite maybe not having a talent advantage over many teams. But now they do have better talent to supplement what already is a hardworking squad. So it was very, very confusing, and also obviously not a good look to concede yet another avoidable own goal, this time by Nuhu, and you put yourself in a hole down on the road somewhere, especially where you have not won since 2011. So Sounders need to fix some things, but I'm sure that with time they will figure out with Schmetzer the right rotations for what should be a deep squad. The Crew start the season with back-to-back wins, despite obviously a thinner attacking core, and they're trying to manage what will now be the start of a potential Champions Cup run where they play LAFC in the round of 16. So business done here with a 1-0 win against the Revs, and Russell Rose proving to be the guy at number 9 so far, goals in both games to start the season. Meanwhile, for the Revs, scoreless in both games to start 2025, which is a bit of a disaster, honestly, considering what this attacking core is. I have high expectations for it. As for defensively, I think they have improved so far, not allowing many chances. There was just 0.4 XG between these two teams, so not very eventful. So I think the defense for the Revs is far more controlled, but for Caleb Porter still has to be on the hot seat. You have to start getting 3 points after that abysmal season last year and start actually implementing these players to get you results. And it doesn't look too much brighter for the Revs going into next week. They host the Union, who have been one of the shocks of the season so far, going 2 for 2 for 6 points after dominating Cincy. The Red Bulls got back to winning ways, beating Nashville 2-0 after falling to Cincinnati in week 1. Goals from Sofo, the young right winger, the new signing, and Forsberg, obviously their magic man, with an absolute banger outside of the box going off the post and in for the second goal. And that's exactly what we need, your DPs to decide games in this league. And when healthy, Forsberg has that level. And for Nashville, it's now 2 games without a goal to start the season as well. And really didn't improve much, in my opinion. Have the same DPs with Mukhtar, Surridge, and Zimmerman. And that midfield, I think they're dealing with some injuries to start the season as well. Maybe not their first choice there, but still, I'm just not seeing, the quality, enough quality in terms of that ball progression, getting their actual best attackers great chances. And Red Bulls as well are also one of those teams that at home, they just don't give up much. They bring that intensity and that tempo, especially with their defensive structure. And Nashville was never going to get back into this one after going down early. Orlando also bounced back with a win of their own, 4-2 against Toronto after an ugly opening week loss, 4-2 to the Union. In this one, it all started with a banger free kick by Araujo. And then from there, the game opened up with the lead. Toronto was caught out a lot on the break, and there were a lot of spaces to exploit in behind. And there were some great balls played in to pad the lead. And for Orlando, though, it's kind of a makeshift back line, not first choice by any means, especially with Janssen, their captain, out. And so I think they're always a risk to concede a goal at really any time with that disjointed back line. And you could really chalk down the 2 goals to poor marking and communication on a corner kick. And then a cross that should have probably been cleared better, that spilled to the top of the box. And then a rocket shot into the bottom corner that you really can't do too much about. So still only 0.4 XG allowed. But if Orlando's back line isn't fully fit, full strength, then I think, we've seen some shaky moments that can really hurt them in matches where their offense, even though it is clicking, it may not be enough. The Union are shutting up all the doubters so far to start the season. An impressive 4-1 win against Cincinnati of all teams with a tie Baribo hat-trick. That's now 5 goals in 2 games for Baribo. And Bradley Carnell, whose time in St. Louis had a lot of attack-oriented, tactics, is getting the best out of this attacking trio for the Union with Gazdag and Ura as well. And not even to mention Quinn Sullivan, who's becoming such a great player at still such a young age in that midfield with some great line-breaking passes in this game. And the off-ball movement, the runs in behind, everything is just clicking for this team right now. And for Cincinnati, really just almost an inexcusable performance. Got completely outplayed. Obviously, they have Champions Cup against Tigres to worry about, and that congestion before this game and after. But they also are not still fully fit on that back line. I really think they could have done better on some of those crosses in the box that led to those goals. But got to give all credit to the Union. Don't want to overreact to just a couple of games, but they may have some issues I was worried about in other areas besides that attack. But if they keep this up, then they should have no problem, getting into the playoffs at the very least, and being an issue for many teams just with how overwhelming they are in that attack. Chicago Fire and DC United played out to a 2-2 draw, a very entertaining game with chances on both ends. Benteke opened the scoring. Kuipers got a brace, I think both on corner kicks, that a header fell to him on the back post both times. And then Benteke skied a penalty in the 90th minute to tie it, but Murrow with probably the goal of the weekend with an insane overhead bicycle kick, whatever you want to call it, to tie it in literally the dying moments. For the Fire, it's a completely disappointing result considering how it happened, but probably a fair result based on the other chances DC had as well, that Chris Brady came out with some massive saves before that equalizer at the end. But for the Fire, they're dealing with a lot of youth in this team, still not at full strength, especially with Brian Gutierrez that was out on the suspension. They had to call up a Fire 2 product, Sam Williams, in that midfield. They already have Orehel, another young player in that midfield, and then also got Sam Rogers in that backline pairing with Elliott. So a lot of growing pains there still for the Fire, but regardless, a point is a point. And for DC now, it's back-to-back 2-2 draws to start this season. The Earthquakes went on the road and beat Kansas City for their first 2-0 start since 2017. And it's fantastic for them, for both their starting strikers, Arango and Martinez, to finally get going this season on the score sheet. And they did concede a penalty shortly after going up 2-0. And then Hernan Lopez got a second yellow early on in the second half. So they were down to 10 men for over half an hour, but yet still came out with the 3 points. And I think that's completely a reflection of Bruce Arena and the influence he's had on this team's mentality already to start 2025. You would just not see that type of result hold for an Earthquakes team in the past handful of years or so. And on KC's side of things, I mean, wow, absolutely appalling in terms of the energy, in terms of the, tempo when they did go up a man, and to not find a goal at home and at least get a point out of this is very, very disappointing. And if that doesn't put Peter Vermeer's even more on the hot seat or make him more deserving of finally being let go, then I don't know what to say, and I really don't have much, empathy for KC's situation. It wasn't the prettiest result, but Minnesota got its first 3 points of the season in a win against Montreal, 1-0. Montreal on the other end is now pointless in its first 2 matches of the season. It was Yeboah who got the breakthrough goal, but minutes before that, he did get fouled in the penalty area. It was given as a penalty for getting kind of tripped or stomped on his foot by the defender. But the referee went to VAR and overturned it, and I just completely disagreed with that call. It was not clear and obvious by any means. But regardless, his goal just minutes after was enough to get Minnesota the win. As for Montreal, really didn't create much in this game compared to their very close loss against Atlanta last week, and they'll be looking to get their first points in the next match. For Minnesota, maybe not the most cohesive attack, especially without Rosales, the left wingback, on that left flank, but still 3 points are 3 points. And Montreal's road form, terrible road form from last season, continues into this one. The Rapids and Dallas played out to an exciting 3-3 draw in a game that obviously had a lot of attacking output. Good to see Navarro get a brace to start his season. And for Dallas, Lucho Costa, his first goal in these new colors. Also, Pedro Musa, 2 goals in 2 games now. And a very fair result. But for the Rapids, I think they'll probably be kicking themselves more over it because they went up 2-0 early, gave up the 2 goals to tie it just before halftime, and then did have to claw their way back from a 3-2 deficit. And especially with the signing of Atencio and what I think is a far better back line than they ended last season with, I think it's a more disappointing result on their end. And for Dallas, which only won 1 away game last season, 4 points in their first 2 games of the season, both being on the road. They'll definitely take that back to Frisco. And for the Rapids, since they're out of Champions Cup now, really expecting them to ramp up this same attacking output because the core is there. I'm really high on this team, but not the best result considering the way this game played out to start life after getting eliminated from Champions Cup. LAFC just keeps on getting by, moving along, and taking every available 3 points offered to them. It's now 3 straight 1-0 results, all at home, this time against NYCFC with a late winner by Hollingshead. And that's just par for the course for LAFC, considering the last couple of seasons as well. They're going to not be the most convincing, but they're going to get results. And they'll probably make a bombshell move in the summer on that right wing in replacement of Under, who hasn't even featured yet to start this season. But defensively, they're rock solid. They don't give up a lot. And that was the case here. NYCFC as well just didn't have the quality to offer anything in this one. And LAFC is just going to get by until they really have to ramp it up. But as for now, they're getting the results they need. They are focusing on Champions Cup, which they'll face the Crew in the round of 16 this week. And they'll move it along. But it's not going to be, the most dominant or pretty wins to start this season. Timbers beat Austin 1-0 a week after getting blown out at home 4-1 to the Whitecaps, and they were missing their best defender Kamal Miller in this one after getting a red card in that Whitecaps game, but they got the job done against Austin 1-0 after Austin was coming off a win against KC. It was the new man Costa who scored the winning goal on a free kick that admittedly Brad Stuver, Austin's keeper, should have done better on, just let it go past him with a lot of bodies in the box, and he thought someone would get on the end of it, but just found its way in, and that was the difference. Now, obviously a great result for Portland, but not trying to take too much from this result because they have so many attacking injuries of their own that we really don't know what they'll be this season at their peak. And for Austin as well, yes, Mirtu Uzuni featured for about half an hour, but still not starting it, so we really can't say or be too harsh on this full strength attack without seeing the entire full strength 11, because Bukhari has been playing on the left hand side before Uzuni actually begins starting, when that's not really his preferred side. He wants to be on the right where he should be in this attack, and they've been putting Aubry on there in the meantime to kind of balance things out, but you're not really getting the best out of your DP in that sense. So once Uzuni comes into the starting 11, we should see a little bit more, players in their natural positions and that sort of thing, and potentially a much more cohesive Austin side. San Diego FC's home opener was unfortunately a bit of a snooze fest, a 0-0 result against St. Louis City, and that's now 2 0-0 to start the season for St. Louis. So yes, 2 draws is not the worst, but it seems like under Melberg, St. Louis City is a little bit more focused on being defensively sound first and foremost, and the progression through the midfield and getting their attackers in good situations just doesn't seem to be clicking right now. The midfield, that attacking potential doesn't really seem to be on it. We saw some moments where they were counter pressing, winning the ball back in decent areas, but then the runners and the routes that they were making to try and spring directly off that and attack quickly, catch San Diego off guard, just was not working. Now, San Diego probably had a few of the better chances in this match, but nothing really doing on their end. They're going to keep things very controlled. The tempo is going to be a little bit slower, and this attack still really needs to gel fully. And not even to mention, of course, Chucky Lozano going off injured. We're going to have to see the severity of that, but the team's lack of depth, especially on the attacking front, is going to be tested immediately. The Whitecaps beat the Galaxy in this one 2-1 to start perfect in the MLS with 6 points through 2 weeks. They also advanced to the round of 16 of Champions Cup, where they'll face Monterrey. The first leg is this midweek at home for the Whitecaps, and it seems like so far I've been proven wrong about this Whitecaps side. They took a complete 180 when it's come to their tactical setup. They used to be such a counterattacking team under Sartini, and now under the new coach, really getting the best out of a lot of their players and their best attributes, and playing such a possession-based style that we really haven't seen before. Brian White's being used aerially, getting fantastic service, and he's already had a hot start to this season. He scored the winner in this one on a header late. Pedro Vite as well, another player in this squad that it seems like his full potential is truly being unlocked, and he's being given the keys to this, system and offense in a sense. And on the Galaxy's end, Gabriel Peck with a moment of magic to tie it in this one before they eventually lost. But it's just going to be the new reality for this Galaxy team. It's going to be a bit of a challenge, to say the least, to kind of get back to where they were with all these injuries and the turnover in the squad. It's going to be interesting to see what style they choose to take in terms of keeping those same tactics or adjusting to the new personnel they have. This week's edition of Sunday Night Soccer featured the Dynamo hosting Miami, and this one was overshadowed by, of course, Lionel Messi being ruled out ahead of time, which obviously brings up its own issues, being that it is Sunday Night Soccer and you want to feature the league, feature its best players, so missing out in this type of primetime matchup is, a bit controversial, but they're trying to obviously load manage him, and that's going to be the case all year, especially on away trips that are farther away for Miami, and as they are going for trophies in competitions they're prioritizing, such as Champions Cup. But Miami didn't miss a beat without Messi. They won this one 4-1. It was 3-0 at halftime, basically already wrapped up, and it was Segovia and Allende, their two new attacking signings, that continue their amazing start to the season. And for Houston, it seems like one of their best attributes from the past couple of seasons is now an additional weakness in terms of now that new center back pairing after Mikael left, and obviously their midfield leaving. Obviously, McGlynn is a bright young star, but regardless, so much turnover, and the attack really isn't threatening enough that now there's weaknesses in all three fronts of the team, and that it just continues now a 0-point start in 2 games for Houston. That does it for this week's 15 and 15 recap of Match Week 2. Be sure to look out on the channel for the coming Match Week 3 preview in the coming days. That'll be dropping shortly. And in the meantime, once again, like the video down below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys in the next video.